Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Thought Project for 2022. We are delighted to be back and to have you join us for today's webinar, where we're going to be looking at how you can change your project planning mindset. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Nicola Spooner, Director at the Search Project. We are a values-driven executive search business for the legal industry and focus on building high-performing project and transformation teams. I'm joined today by Jeremy Nichols and Claire Copeland. Claire has over 15 years experience in project, programme and transformation with a very pragmatic style. She's worked across a range of industries, including financial services, supply chain, transport, and most recently legal, and is a huge advocate for getting the project planning process right from the outset. Claire currently heads up the project delivery team at Clyde & Co. Thank you for joining us today, Claire.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Nicola.
With extensive experience in project programmes and portfolio management, Jeremy has worked across a range of industries, including 4 law firms. He is the author of The Everyday Project Manager, a fantastic book which outlines the key project management concepts. If that's not enough, he also runs a training company which shares the Everyday Project Manager philosophy with non-project managers and experienced project professionals. So we're looking forward to hearing his expertise on project planning. Jeremy, thank you for joining us again.
It's lovely to be here.
Let's start with the basics. Why do we need a project plan?
So a project plan fulfills a number of functions, and any one of them on its own is a good enough reason to have a project plan, I think. And then the fact that it can be multiple things to multiple people makes it one of the key project tools. First and foremost, I suppose the point of project management is to deliver an outcome within a defined period. So two deadlines, and in order to do that, you need to have something that tells you what that period is and how the tasks within it will fall out. So it's a visual and scheduling tool that allows you to understand when things need to happen and who needs to do what and in what order. And to that extent, it's a useful communications tool. So the first thing it does is it gathers around everyone around the same set of ideas about how the project is going to be delivered. So everyone has a common view of what the plan is. But it's a communications tool not just within the project team, but external to the project team. So if you need to be talking to stakeholders, there are different cuts you could take of a plan that will help explain to others what it is you're trying to deliver, where you are in that delivery, how it's going, and what some of the challenges might be. So it's a useful talking point and comms tool. It's also effectively a contract between you and your project team and you and your stakeholders. It's an agreement around what will be delivered and the order in which it will be delivered, and importantly, when it will be delivered by. So it performs that function as well. And that's sort of one of the key functions. You agree what the plan will be, and then that is what you as the PM will endeavour to hold people to or manage as situations change, issues arise. It's your tool, your lever for understanding the time-related elements of any issues that arise. And finally, it acts as a central source of truth, and that is hugely important on a project where typically you're bringing multiple disciplines together who might not understand the details of someone else's job role, but understand that they have a role on the project. Bringing all those disciplines together, having them work towards a shared view of the landscape, and having that as the single and central source of the truth is vital for getting that team cohesiveness, and for keeping everyone focused on the end goal. And obviously, typically, projects are not flashes in the pan. They exist over a period of time, and having that backbone of the plan to your project delivery helps keep that consistency throughout the project.
That's a great overview, thank you. It's a pretty rhetorical question in terms of why we need a plan, but I think that covers a lot of it. What is a project plan not? Because I think that's quite an important thing to cover off as well.
Yeah, well, it's there are a lot of things that it gets taken for, perhaps, that it is not. So it's not, for example, a to-do list. It's not there as a tool to micromanage other people's activities. It says here you're going to do this on this date. Where is it? And where? It's much more intended to give an overview of the sort of activities that will happen in the order they will happen. It's not there to say at a task level what anyone's going to be doing at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. And it's very easy to get drawn into a world where your project plan is so incredibly detailed because you're trying to manage people's work rather than the people themselves, and keeping everyone sort of focused towards an end delivery. So the plan's not a task list. It's not it's not a subject of debate in many ways. The plan is the plan, and there can be debate around how accurate it is or what needs to change within it. But it is, as I say, it needs to be something that everyone agrees on in terms of the delivery, and everyone agrees around what the things within the plan are telling you in terms of how to deal with an issue. But I think the most important thing is just that it's not meant to be used as a device with which to beat people over the head, which it frequently is, of course.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really interesting one. My plans for any house projects tend to just be a to-do list, so I think I've got a lot to learn. Before I forget, anyone that's joined, please feel free to put any questions that might occur to you as we go through the conversation into the comments, and we'll be able to come back to those towards the end. Claire, who has input into that plan?
100% isn't the project manager on their own, which you often will find a project manager will write a plan and then present it because they feel it's their responsibility. Project manager's responsibility is to gather those pieces of information. So you need the project in a room or on a call to discuss what those elements to get to your end goal are. They are the experts. That's why they're on the project. You're there to coordinate them and keep them moving. So make sure that you do get the inputs from each of those areas to create your plan. And it will also then draw out where you have your dependencies and things like that. So they are absolutely key. Obviously, the project manager for the core things that all projects have. So there will be things that each company has within their governance that you need to include in a plan. So make sure that you have those and they get slotted in where they need to be. The business and stakeholders will have an opinion and some input into the plan, especially if you have a date that you're ending on, as opposed to building a plan to allow to tell when the date is ending. If you know that the 1st of May needs to be when you delivered, you need to have your business and stakeholders decide what elements need to be and can be excluded, so that you can still meet your dates. So it's a group effort to create a plan.
And in terms of once that plan's created, so you've pulled your team together, they've given all of their subject matter expertise and their input to that. Who are you actually writing the plan for?
There's a couple of people, the people that have input into it, but on different levels. So from a project perspective and a project group's perspective, they want to see the detail behind that plan. So they need to know when you talked about having a task list. So when your task to paint the kitchen happens, you may have information about that, but you'll need to see within the overall plan when you can do that. So when is it that you paint the kitchen? So to do that, you need to cover the cupboards and choose your paint, etc. That won't be in the plan, but when you start your execution, it will be. So you need that level of detail for each of the project areas. You then need the plan that you use on a daily basis. So it's like your daily workbook. It'd be interesting to ask people on the call who has an up-to-date plan right now for a project they're executing, because as project managers, we should live in the plan and on a daily basis be updating it, closing items off, adding items as we use them, but often we don't. So it's your workbook and you use that on a daily basis. And then there's another level, whether it's the exec, it's the stakeholders, it's the steering group, depending what you call it, that want to know that plan exists, but they don't want to know that on the 15th of January, we need to paint the kitchen. They want to see the major milestones from that plan. But what you need to resist doing is recreating those plans for each audience, because then you'll have to update them for each audience, or they'll be very quickly come out of whack. And then you'll be questioned, why do I see this date and somebody else sees this date?
After you, Jeremy.
I was just going to sort of pick up on that. Is it fair? I think it's fair to say, is it clear that what we're talking about is that there is one plan that sits behind, but there's different lenses everyone will have. You're talking about the same central set of data, if you like.
Yes.
But your senior stakeholders don't need to see infinite level of detail, so you will take a cut of that. That they can easily digest. People often do like a plan on a page, for example, that just has a summary. It's important that the plan that sits behind is singular, and you don't have multiple different versions of the same plan. What you're doing is taking cuts of a single plan.
Absolutely. It's the same information, just presenting it so that it's digestible to that audience.
Okay, so in terms of that plan being filtered depending on the audience, Jeremy, you spoke about this from your portfolio management days as to how useful a tool that was. Do you want to just give us an overview from a management perspective?
Yes. So I think the thing you're referring to is what level of view do you particularly want in any particular position? And yes. So if you're running a portfolio, multiple different projects, what you don't necessarily want, you want to know that each of those projects has a detailed plan, but you probably don't want or have time to digest the detail of each of those individual project plans. And what you'll be looking for is a summary. What are the 10 key deliverables or key milestones on each of those plans? And if you can summarize those up, then you start to get towards a portfolio view of how all of your projects are performing. So having points at the lower level within the project plan that you can identify and you can summarize up and report on each time. So as a project manager, as I say, one of the functions of the plan is as a comms tool, understanding the points within your plan that you think are sufficiently important to communicate against. So I'm not going to tell you, Nicola, every day on how the kitchen redevelopment project is going to the level of we've put this lick of paint here and put that cupboard in. But what I might tell you is when that section of the kitchen is complete and ready to start using. So it's about identifying the key bits. Now, again, we're still referring to the same plan, but there are levels at which you will choose to summarize up. And equally, when I'm speaking to you as the sponsor of the kitchen renovation project, I'll give you a level of detail. But when I'm talking to the people who are doing the delivery, and Claire touched on this already, really, they might have a level of detail that they go down into, which does almost reach a task level of piece. And so it's understanding for which audience you're talking to, what is the appropriate level of detail. And as I say, particularly when you start talking about portfolios, what you're talking then is not just summarizing up within a project plan, but having multiple project plans, which perhaps have the same key data points that you want to summarize up at a portfolio level. I hope that makes sense.
So as a project manager, I need to be mindful of the audience that's going to be using and referring to that plan. So there's the detail going down to the project team, but it's a really interesting take on it when you look at what the portfolio manager or the manager of the team needs, which is a much more high level overview of those milestones. So it's a really good way of targeting that. What happens when you've created this beautiful project plan and it's perfectly written and it's well crafted, and someone challenges your plan, be it stakeholders or the business or the team?
Is that shall I go?
Okay.
I don't want to be consistently talking about it depends on the stage at which that challenge comes. At the outset, when you're bringing the plan together, what you want is lots of challenge. We want people to say, I don't know if that's achievable that date, because there will come a point where you commit to the plan, and at that point, it's not that it's too late for challenge at that point, but you've committed to delivering. Prior to commitment, you want to get as much challenge into it as you can, so that you can be certain that the plan you arrive at is robust and has already withstood a certain number of a certain amount of challenge. After that point, challenges will arise from various different quarters. It might be an issue that's arisen that perhaps suggests that the plan that you had is no longer achievable. There's an old saying, no plan withstands contact with the enemy, you know, or as Chris Eubank put it, everyone has a plan until they get punched. You know, as soon as you get it out into the world, it will very rapidly come under a lot of challenge. What you need to do is understand whether the plan can survive that challenge, whether there's a way the plan can be adapted that absorbs that challenge, or whether that challenge is so great that a level of replanning is necessary, or even that the project's goals are no longer achievable on the timeline you initially outlined. So it's to do with understanding the scale of the challenge that will dictate your response. But I think what you should do at all times as a project manager is be open to that challenge of the plan, because all that challenge is saying there may be a reason why your project can't deliver in the way that you think it can, and you want to know about that.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think you're right, is that always accept the challenge, and a plan will only fail because a challenge has been ignored or misunderstood. So there's nothing wrong with having to change your plan because of what's come up that you hadn't been able to predict in the future, but make sure you're aware of those and you're able to articulate why you've had to change the plan, what it is that's come in and changed it for you.
I think this touches on a common misunderstanding about project plans, which is that the project manager and their team comes up with this plan, and then it is sort of laminated in glass, stuck on the wall, and that is what gets delivered. And it's simply not the case. A good plan, needs to have waypoints along the way that you commit to delivering, but everything between those points ought to be in the project team's gift to move about and adjust in order to withstand the day-to-day issues that you come across. Obviously, the goal at the outset is to stick as closely to the plan as possible, but the project manager who holds up a plan as an absolutely rigid, this cannot be changed ideal is going to fail, because the plan needs to adapt. And you know, the plan that you finish the project with might look very different from the plan that you started with. It's helpful to get away from the idea that in and of itself is a bad thing. That is a good thing. It has shown you've understood the challenges, you've understood how the world has changed as you go through delivery, and adapted your plan accordingly. That's a sensible and mature approach to project delivery.
There's a really fine line, isn't there? So we're going to move on to talking about milestones in projects and moving those milestones. And from what you've just said there, change is inevitable in a project plan, but moving milestones isn't something we should do often, or ever, or often. What's the right answer?
I prefer lightly.
We shouldn't do it lightly. Fair enough.
It's not that you shouldn't ever move a milestone, and you know, project governance dictates the process through which milestones can be adjusted. If you aren't going to hit a milestone, it's bloody minded just to hold the milestone